For exposing my parents after they let my daughter and me go homeless? Evelyn Hargrove, my grandmother, saw us one morning outside the shelter. It was January, shortly after 6, and Zoe was trying to adjust a backpack that was too big for her. Evelyn looked at the sign, then at my daughter, and then at me. "Natalie," she said, "why aren't you in the house in Highland Park?" I did not understand what house she meant. 3 days later, I walked into a family gathering in a hotel ballroom downtown. My parents were there. When they saw me, they stopped talking. That morning, before running into Evelyn, the only thing I was worried about was a sock. Getting Zoe ready for school at the shelter had become a small, exhausting operation. Do not forget the notebook, do not lose the lunchbox, do not take too long in the shower, do not draw too much attention. Everything had to be done quickly and sleepily, making sure she did not notice more than necessary. "Mom," she told me quietly, "it's okay. I'll wear 2 different ones." She held up a pink one with a unicorn and a white one already a bit dingy. I stared at them for a few seconds. At any other time, I would have cared that they matched. That morning, I just needed us to catch the bus. "All right," I told her. "They pass for today." Zoe smiled a little. "Then I'll wear them." For a moment, I almost forgot where we were. Then the shelter door opened. The morning chill rushed in, and I remembered again. We were outside the Hope Family Shelter in the Pico Union neighborhood. The sidewalk was still wet from the drizzle the night before. The sky was gray, and the air smelled of bread from a nearby bakery, mixed with bus exhaust and cheap coffee. At that hour, you could still make your way through the city before traffic started getting heavy. Zoe had a notebook, a small lunchbox, and a pencil with a chewed-up eraser in her backpack. I zipped up her jacket and tried not to look at the sign again. It weighed on me that this sign summed us up like that. "We have to hurry," I told her. "If we miss the bus, getting to school will be tough." Zoe's elementary school was downtown, not too far from the county medical center where I worked. From Pico Union we could still get around without crossing half the city, but if we left late, everything became much harder. The buses were packed, traffic was jammed, the little girl was sleepy, and I was counting coins. Zoe nodded. Lately, she asked fewer questions, which worried me more than her tantrums. Then she looked at me carefully. "What if Mrs. Karen Ellis asks for our address for the form again?" I felt a knot in my stomach. "I don't think she will ask today," I replied. She did not push it. She looked at her shoes, then at my face. She looked serious, way too serious for a 6-year-old girl. "Mom," she said, "are we going to move again?" I opened my mouth but did not know what to answer. That was when a black sedan pulled up next to the sidewalk. It was not a taxi or a rideshare. It was a chauffeured car, clean, dark, and completely out of place in front of the shelter. Later, I found out that Evelyn's foundation delivered donations there once a month. Usually, a coordinator went, but that day the woman was sick, and my grandmother decided to show up herself. In that moment, I only saw the chauffeur step out and open the back door. Out came Evelyn Hargrove. I had not seen her since before things started going wrong. My mother, Patricia, was Evelyn's daughter, but for years she had made me believe that my grandmother did not want to hear about problems. She always said she was busy and that I should not bother her. I believed her. I was also too embarrassed to ask for help. My grandmother looked the same as always. Well-dressed, serious, with her hair pulled back and that presence that made people lower their voices without her even asking. She was not an affectionate woman like other grandmothers, but she was not cruel either. She was practical. Seeing me there, she stopped walking. "Natalie," she said, "what are you doing here?" My first impulse was to lie, not because I was afraid of her, but because I was ashamed for her to see me like this. "We are fine," I said. "It is just for a few days." Evelyn looked at Zoe's mismatched socks, then at my hands, dry from the cold and the hand sanitizer. Her expression barely changed, but I noticed it. "Natalie," she repeated, "why aren't you living in the house on Sycamore Street?" I looked at her. "What house?" "The one in Highland Park," she said slowly. "The house I got ready for you." My heart started pounding. "I don't have a house." Zoe tugged on my sleeve. "Mom, we have a house?" I looked at her. In her eyes there was a hope that hurt me. "I did not know anything, my love." Evelyn pressed her lips together. Whenever she did that, she was almost always organizing her thoughts before acting. She stepped toward Zoe and crouched down in front of her. That surprised me. Evelyn was not one for gentle gestures, but she lowered herself to my daughter's height. "You must be Zoe, right?" Zoe nodded. "Yes, nice to meet you, Zoe." Then Evelyn stood up and looked at me. "Come with me to the car." "Grandma, Natalie," she said. "Keep it down, please." She said it in a way that left no room for argument. My face burned with shame, but Zoe took my hand. "Let's go, Mom." Having my daughter be the one to calm me down completely defeated me. We got into the car. Zoe went in first, hugging her backpack. I sat next to her. In the car, no one spoke for a few seconds. Evelyn sat in the front next to the chauffeur and pulled out her cell phone. "I am going to find out what happened," she said. "Grandma, I don't understand anything." "I know. That is why I am worried." She tapped the screen. "Call Alexander." A man answered almost immediately. "Mrs. Hargrove." "Alexander, I need you to talk to the property manager of the house on Sycamore Street," Evelyn said. "Check who received the keys, who is living there, and if there is a lease agreement. Do not assume anything just yet. I want documents." I felt cold inside. "Rent?" I asked. Evelyn did not answer me right away. She just kept looking forward. The chauffeur did not say anything either. I stopped thinking that this was all just a misunderstanding. 6 months earlier in July, my life was tough, but it still had some order. I worked as a nursing assistant at the county medical center. 12-hour shifts, crowded hallways, patients calling out constantly. But I had a job, a routine, and Zoe still felt safe with me. Zoe's dad had been out of our lives for years. I did not expect anything from him anymore. Later, I moved in with my parents. It was supposed to be temporary. At the time, I wanted to believe it. My dad, Richard, had a calm voice that made almost anything sound reasonable. My mom, Patricia, would smile softly, even when saying something hurtful. Now it is hard for me to call them mom and dad. Sometimes I just think of them as Patricia and Richard. "Stay with us while you get back on your feet," Patricia told me. "Zoe needs a quiet place. That is what family is for." I wanted to believe her. My parents' apartment was in an older building in Van Nuys. Zoe slept in the room that used to be mine. I contributed what I could. I bought groceries and tried to stay out of the way. Later I learned that by then, the house on Sycamore Street was already ready. No one told me anything. First it was not that bad. Then the comments started. "You always come home exhausted," Patricia would say. "You need to organize yourself better." If Zoe left toys in the living room, Richard would sigh. "We just want to keep the house tidy." They were not yelling. They were just little phrases, but hearing them every day slowly stripped away my place in that home. I also started noticing unopened collection envelopes stashed away, calls Richard answered in the bathroom, and hushed arguments. Patricia said it was none of my business. I did not want to get involved anyway. One night, after a double shift, Patricia asked me to sit in the kitchen. "We need to talk," she said. I already knew nothing good ever came after that sentence. "We think it is time you look for a place of your own," she went on. "We cannot solve your life for you forever." "I am looking," I told her. "But they ask for a deposit, a guarantor with property, proof of income. It is not that easy." Patricia looked down at her hands. "Natalie, you are a mother. You have to find a way." Richard chimed in from the head of the table. "We will give you 30 days. We do not want to kick you out, but we also need our peace of mind." I nodded because I did not want to argue. Besides, arguing with them always ended the same way. I was made out to be overreacting. I looked for rooms and apartments during my breaks at the medical center. I called listings. I sent messages. In almost every place, they asked for more than I could scrape together. First month's rent, a deposit, a guarantor, proof of income. In others, they simply told me they had already chosen someone else. Not even 2 weeks had passed when Patricia decided those 30 days no longer counted. I got home after midnight. I had just come from a long shift, my feet aching and my head heavy. The hallway light was on. In front of the door were 2 cardboard boxes. They were my boxes. I stared at them for a moment. Then I tried to open the door. It was locked. I knocked. No one answered. I knocked again, louder. Patricia barely opened it. Her face was calm, way too calm. "Keep your voice down," she said. "The neighbors." "Why is my stuff outside?" Richard spoke from inside. "We already talked about this, Natalie. You need to take responsibility. It has not been 30 days. Plans changed," Patricia said. I looked over her shoulder. Zoe was asleep on the entryway floor next to the shoe rack, with her jacket folded under her head. She had her sneakers on. They had left her there so I would just pick her up and leave without making a sound. "Where do you expect us to go?" I asked. Patricia pressed her lips tight. "You will figure it out. You always do, but do not cause a scene here." I walked in just to pick Zoe up. She wrapped her arms around my neck without fully waking up. "Mom," she mumbled. "Let's go," I told her. "Go back to sleep for a little while." I loaded the boxes into my old sedan, the one I could barely maintain, and drove aimlessly for a while. I remember the city lights reflecting on the windshield. I remember my hands shaking. I remember Zoe asleep in the back seat, curled up into a ball, while I tried to think of something useful. The next day I called Patricia. She did not answer. I called Richard. "We are doing this for your own good," he said, "even if you do not understand it right now." Then he hung up. I went to work because I did not know what else to do. We slept in the car for one night. Then I paid for a cheap hotel near the medical center. I managed 2 more nights until the money ran out. Mrs. Karen Ellis noticed Zoe was quiet. She asked me if everything was okay. I said yes. Later she asked me again more gently. I saw that Zoe was listening to me. I felt ashamed to keep saying everything was fine, so I told the truth. It was not a long confession. I just said we had slept in the car, and I did not know how much longer I could keep going like this. Mrs. Karen Ellis did not ask any extra questions. She gave me a glass of water, called social services, and stayed with Zoe in the classroom for a few minutes so I could breathe. 2 days later, when they found a temporary place, a social worker helped me start the intake process at the Hope Family Shelter. The woman was kind, although you could tell she was exhausted. "I need to know where you slept last night," she told me. "In my car." She nodded and kept filling out the form. Zoe leaned toward me. "Is this our house now?" The social worker looked down. I smiled as best as I could. "No, my love. It is a place to stay while we find something." At the shelter, everything ran on a schedule. Meals, showers, going out. No one was rude, but you quickly learned to take up little space and not ask for too much, even if no one said it out loud. That night, Zoe fell asleep in a narrow bed next to me. The room smelled of bleach and reheated food. I stayed awake listening to other families through the walls. Coughing, a crying baby, someone talking in a low voice. I thought about calling Evelyn, but Patricia's voice crept into my head. "Your grandmother is traveling. She is busy. Do not drag her into this." She had texted me that when I asked if Evelyn knew anything. It did not even take her a minute to reply, so I did not call. I told myself I would figure it out. And then one cold January morning, Evelyn showed up outside the shelter and asked me about a house I did not even know existed. In the car, her phone call continued. I could only hear her sigh. "Start with the key handover receipt," she said. "Then check for a lease and any listings. If there are payments, I want to know who received them." She paused. "No, do not say anything to Patricia just yet." She hung up and looked at me. "I am not going to jump to conclusions until I review the documents," she said. "But I do not like this." I sent a message to the school. "Family emergency. Zoe will not be attending today." Evelyn asked the chauffeur to find a nearby coffee shop. A few minutes later, we were sitting in a small place with simple tables and the smell of coffee and pastries. The warmth hit my face, and I almost cried from exhaustion. Zoe found a drawing of pancakes on the paper placemat and started coloring it. Evelyn ordered hot chocolate for her. It was not a huge deal, but in that moment it felt like everything. "I am going to call your mother," Evelyn told me. "I want to hear what she has to say." She put her phone on speaker, but she did not motion for me to speak. Patricia answered with her sweet voice. "Evelyn, how wonderful. How are you?" "I am well," my grandmother replied. "I wanted to ask you about Natalie. I have not talked to her in days." There was a very brief pause. "She is doing fine," Patricia said. You know how she is. Sometimes she shuts down and wants to do everything her own way. Evelyn stayed quiet. Is she still at the house? She asked. Yes, of course, Patricia answered too quickly. She is all settled in. We wanted to give her some space and not bother you with details. Is Zoe okay? She is fine too. I looked down at the table. I felt ashamed, angry, and an old sadness all mixed together. Patricia kept talking. She said I needed stability, that family always does their best to help, that sometimes I was difficult, but they would never let me down. Evelyn did not interrupt her. Good to know, she said at last and hung up. I stayed quiet. So she knew, I said. Evelyn put her phone away. She knew enough to lie to me. Zoe pushed her drawing toward me. Mom, look. I colored the pancakes purple. I forced myself to smile. They look great. She went back to coloring. Evelyn leaned toward me a little. Natalie, that house is still in my name, but I set it aside for you too so you and Zoe would have a stable place. Your parents were supposed to get the keys and help you move in. They told me you were already there. I clenched my hands in my lap. I was struggling to process what I was hearing. And why didn't you check? Evelyn took a deep breath. Because I trusted Patricia, because I was away for several weeks, and because I thought that if you did not call me, it was because you wanted to handle it without me. I was wrong. I am not looking for excuses. That was what surprised me the most. If they rented it out, I asked, no one noticed? The house was not meant for business. The property manager only had to record the handover and oversee maintenance. He was not expecting any rental activity because there was not supposed to be any. That is why we are going to request every single document. It had not been a mistake. Someone had used that house to collect rent. Evelyn stood up and talked on her phone away from the table. I managed to catch a few words. File, property manager, lease, wire transfer, listing lawyer. When she came back, her face was completely resolved. You are not going back to the shelter. I wanted to tell her it was not necessary, that I could handle it, that I did not want to owe anyone anything, but I was too tired to keep faking strength. Thank you, I barely managed to say. Evelyn put us up in a quiet hotel near Union Station. It was close to the shelter and the medical center, and from there we could get around without crossing half the city during rush hour. It was not luxurious, but it was clean and had hot water. Zoe jumped on the bed a couple of times until I asked her to get down. She found the little bar of soap in the bathroom, smelled it very seriously and said, "It smells like an elegant grandmother." Evelyn, who was checking messages by the window, almost smiled. That night, once Zoe was asleep with her stuffed bunny, Evelyn sat across from me. Your parents have a family gathering in 3 days, she said, in a hotel ballroom downtown. Patricia is planning to talk about family, about unity, and about how much everyone supports each other. She asked me to go. I stared at her. Do you want to confront them there? I do not want to cause a scene, she said. But they used the family to lie. I am not going to sit there and listen to them as if nothing happened. I did not know what to answer. If you do not want to go in, you do not have to, she added. But I am absolutely going to set the record straight. Over those 3 days, Alexander gathered the essentials. First came the key handover receipt signed by Patricia in July. Then the rental listing for the house with pictures of the patio and the kitchen. The last things were some receipts the tenants sent when the property manager explained to them that there was an irregularity. They were paying via bank transfer to an account that did not belong to Evelyn. It was not every single document, but it was enough to understand that it had not been a misunderstanding. Evelyn also explained something I had not known or had not wanted to see. For years, she had helped Patricia and Richard with major expenses and loans that they always promised to sort out. Once she stopped doing that, hidden debts were bound to surface. 3 days later, I was in the hotel bathroom looking in the mirror. I looked tired, more tired than I wanted to admit. Evelyn had bought me a simple, dark blue dress, nothing flashy. It is not about impressing anyone, she told me when she handed it to me. I just want you to walk in feeling at ease. Zoe wore a light blue dress and white tights. She spun around in the room. I look like a princess. You look beautiful, I told her. We left for downtown with plenty of time. It was early for dinner, but Evelyn did not want to rush. In that area, a protest, rain, or a crash could completely change the drive. In the car, I could not stop wringing my hands. What if I cannot speak? I asked. Then I will speak. What if they deny it? They probably will try to. And what if everyone thinks I did something wrong? Evelyn looked at me. You do not have to prove anything, Natalie. Just walk in. I am with you. The ballroom was in a hotel downtown. There were white flowers, waiters carrying appetizers, coffee, glasses, and a screen set up for family photos. At the entrance, a sign read, Hargrove Family Reunion. My mother liked those reunions because she could show off the family exactly the way she wanted it to be seen. Before going in, Evelyn spoke to a hotel employee, and they took us to a small room next to the ballroom. She had requested it that morning. She also gave them a heads up that there might be a family argument. In the room there was water, juice, and cookies. Zoe is staying here, Evelyn said. She does not need to hear this. Lisa, Evelyn's assistant, sat with her. I had known her since I was a little girl. She was discreet and patient. Zoe looked at the table. Can I have some cookies? Just one first, Evelyn said. Then we will see. Zoe nodded and grabbed one. She waved at me and I felt the urge to cry again. You go in first, Evelyn told me. I understood. She wanted Patricia and Richard to see me before they saw her. All alone. The conversations quieted down a bit and then picked back up. There were aunts, cousins, and family acquaintances I had not seen in months. Some looked at me in surprise. Others pretended not to. Then Patricia saw me. Her smile appeared out of habit, but it did not last. She looked at my dress, my face, my empty hands. Richard was right beside her. Upon seeing me, he stopped laughing. Neither of them came over. They did not ask about Zoe. They did not ask where I had been. They just stood there staring, trying to figure out how much I knew. I stayed close to a wall. I did not want to do anything just yet. A minute later, Evelyn walked in accompanied by Alexander. He was carrying a folder and a laptop. Patricia turned pale. She tried to smile but could not hold the expression. Evelyn politely greeted a few relatives and then looked at my mother. Patricia was her daughter, but she could not even hold her gaze. Patricia, Evelyn said, before dinner I need to clear something up. Of course, Mom, Patricia replied too quickly. You told me Natalie was living in the house on Sycamore Street. The room gradually fell silent. Patricia darted her eyes toward Richard. Yes, well, Evelyn raised a hand without being sharp about it. I am not going to argue here about what is already documented. Alexander hooked the laptop up to the projector. Before showing anything, he explained that personal and banking details had been redacted. The first document appeared on the screen. The key handover receipt for the house on Sycamore Street, signed by Patricia in July. Evelyn spoke without raising her voice. This property is in my name. I set it aside for Natalie and Zoe. The instruction was to hand it over to them. She moved on to the second document. It was a screenshot of the rental listing posted a few weeks later. Furnished house for rent, Highland Park. There were pictures of the living room, the kitchen, a bedroom with light-colored curtains, and a small patio. A place I had never seen but where other people had already lived. The third document was a simple ledger of payments. It was not a full bank statement, just dates, amounts, and wire transfer reference numbers. A little over $1,000 a month deposited for months into an account provided by Patricia and Richard. The room went dead silent. Evelyn looked at my parents. It was not a misunderstanding. You took the keys, you rented out the house, and you collected rent that did not belong to you. Meanwhile, Natalie and Zoe were left without a stable place to stay. Richard stepped forward. This is not the place to talk about this. Evelyn looked at him calmly. That is exactly why I will not pretend that nothing happened. Patricia tried to speak twice before her voice finally came out. We were going to fix it, she said. It was just for a few months. We had debts. And while you two sorted out your debts, Evelyn replied, Natalie and Zoe slept in a car and then in a shelter. Someone muttered something in the back. One of my aunts covered her mouth with her hand. Patricia started to cry. We did not know things were that bad. I looked at her. I did not feel strong. I just felt tired. You locked the door on me with Zoe asleep in the entryway, I said. Yes, you knew. Patricia looked down. Evelyn opened the folder Alexander was holding. As of today, I will no longer cover your debts or personal expenses, she said. Any matters regarding Natalie will go through Alexander. You will also have to answer for the rent money you collected. Alexander pulled out some documents. This is a formal demand letter, he explained. The rest will be filed through the proper legal channels. Near the entrance, 2 hotel security guards were watching closely. They did not do anything. They were just there in case the situation got out of hand. Richard took the documents with tense hands, looking around. This time it took him a while to react. Patricia approached me, crying, "Natalie, please, I am your mom." I took a slow breath. Zoe was family too, I told her. And you still kicked her out. I said it quietly. I did not want to say anything else. Then I walked out of the ballroom. I did not want to watch them try to explain themselves. I walked to the room where my daughter was. Zoe looked up with half a cookie in her hand. "Are we leaving now?" I crouched down and hugged her. "Yes, my love. We are leaving now." She looked at me carefully. "Back to the hotel?" Took me a second to answer. "For today, yes. Later, we are going to see the house." Evelyn caught up to us in the hallway. She did not look back. In the car, Zoe fell asleep on my shoulder. I stared out the window without saying a word. "And what happens now?" I asked. Evelyn clasped her hands over her purse. "Now we do things right. We get the house back without hurting the people who are living there. And then we figure the rest out step by step." It was not immediate. There was paperwork, phone calls, documents, and days when I felt afraid again. The tenants were not to blame for what my parents had done. They had a lease they had paid on time, and they also got scared when they found out something was wrong. Evelyn handled everything the right way through the property manager and the lawyer. She gave them time to move out and reached a settlement. I did not have to face them. I just had to wait. And waiting is tiring too. Some days I would wake up expecting another piece of bad news. Other days Zoe would ask when we could see the house. And I did not know whether to answer her with excitement or caution. Evelyn never promised dates that were not entirely up to her. That helped me more than I imagined. After so many broken promises, an honest answer, even an incomplete one, felt different. This time, Evelyn stayed on top of the process. Months later, when the next school year started, things were much calmer. We live in the house on Sycamore Street. It has a small living room, a bright kitchen, and a little patio where Zoe placed 2 flower pots that she sometimes forgets to water. Her room has yellow curtains and drawings taped to the wall. Now she goes to an elementary school close to the house. Some mornings we walk together, and I watch her walk in with her backpack just like any other little girl, without having to wonder where she is going to sleep that night. I am still working as a nursing assistant. I went back to the medical center, feeling less afraid to check my phone during my breaks. I am also making progress little by little to finish my training as a registered nurse. Not everything was fixed overnight. I still keep a tight budget. I compare prices at the grocery store and worry about making it to the end of the month. The difference is that now I can handle those things without feeling like everything is going to collapse. Evelyn comes over some Sundays bringing pastries. She says she just dropped by because she was in the neighborhood, even though Zoe and I know that is not true. "Grandma Evelyn." Zoe asks her sometimes, "Do you like our house?" Evelyn always takes a moment before answering. "Yes," she says. "I like it very much." Patricia tried to reach out to me several times, not to genuinely apologize but to explain, to justify, to say that things had just gotten out of hand. First, it hurt to see her name on my screen. Then I realized that answering her would just be going back to the same old thing. I blocked her. Richard did not call. I heard through other relatives that they had to start paying back the rent money, and that the legal process was ongoing. There were subpoenas, written responses, and many phone calls between lawyers. Still, for the first time, the problem was in the hands of people who could not slam the door in my face. I also learned that when Evelyn stopped helping them, debts they had been hiding for years came to light. Some people stopped inviting them over. Others stopped believing them. It did not make me happy to hear it, but I could not take responsibility for it either. I do not know if I will ever be able to forgive them. For now, the distance is good for me. Sometimes Zoe still keeps mismatched socks in her drawer. She says she likes them that way. I do not argue with her. Every time I see her running around the house, I think of that morning outside the shelter and the question that brought everything to light. Why aren't you living in the house? I do not know if there was another way to go about it. Maybe yes, maybe no. What I do know is that Evelyn asked the question no one else was willing to ask. And ever since then, when I lock the door from the inside and see Zoe's backpack tossed on the couch, I am reminded that this house did not just fall from the sky. Someone had set it aside for us. Others hid it from us. And in the end, even though it took a while, the truth came out before I completely stopped believing that I could still have a place for my daughter and me. What I realized did not hit me all at once at the dinner, or when I saw the paperwork, or when I heard my mom lying on the phone. It came to me later, once we were already in the house on a random morning, watching Zoe look for her socks without being afraid that someone would tell her she was in the way. Right then, I understood that family cannot be a word used to demand silence, while someone strips you of your basic needs. My parents did not fail me just by keeping rent money. They failed me because they watched my daughter sleep on the floor and still chose to protect their own comfort. Since then, I have learned that putting distance between people is not always a punishment. Sometimes it is the only way to protect the little you have managed to build. Not everything is fixed just because someone says, "We are family." First, there has to be truth, restitution, and a clear boundary. Without that, going back is just returning to the same closed door. Comment. I hope this story reminds you how deeply your own worth matters in every relationship. Sometimes, drawing clear boundaries with family is the only way to protect your peace. True kindness from someone who really sees you can quietly change everything. Healing begins the moment we stop pretending things are fine when they are not. Taking responsibility for the hurt we cause is what real growth looks like. You deserve a home where you and your loved ones feel safe and valued. If you are carrying a similar weight right now, know that choosing yourself is never selfish. Learning to step back from painful patterns opens the door to genuine calm. I am always moved by how one honest conversation can start the rebuilding process. What about you? Has there ever been a moment when setting a firm boundary finally gave you room to breathe? If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.